on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Alex. If you're new here, I talk about a lot of movies and video games on the channel. Speaking of games, we're going to be talking not about a video game today, but we're going to be talking about an adaptation of a role-playing board game, a very popular one, and that is a review of the new Dungeons & Dragons movie, Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves. Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves stars Chris Pine, Michelle Rodriguez, Sophia Lillis, Jean Page, I think that's how you say his first name, Justice Smith, and Hugh Grant. A charming thief and a band of unlikely adventurers undertake an epic heist to retrieve a lost relic, but things go dangerously awry when they run afoul of the wrong people. Now, I'll be completely transparent with you right now. I haven't played a lick of D&D. I know exactly what it is, though. There's probably a dungeon master out there who came up with this whole plot and now is going to watch this movie and be like, shit, now it's all ruined. And I'll continue to be transparent with you guys. The trailer didn't do anything for me. This looked like a steaming pile of shit, in my opinion. It was one of those movies that I thought I was literally going to go into and laugh at. Dungeons and Dragons Among Thieves. Mark this day. Mark this day. Dungeons and Dragons Among Thieves is good. It's good. It's surprisingly, shockingly good. It's not the quality of those Dungeons & Dragons movies from the 2000s. That trilogy doesn't even count as much as it thinks that it exists. It doesn't in many people's minds. This is the Dungeons & Dragons movie that I think a lot of Dungeons & Dragons fans are going to praise for a long time, and I hope it makes a lot of money because I would love to see a sequel to this. The vibe that I was getting from this movie, from the trailers, and from the early parts of this movie were that it was just going to be one of those movies that was so bad, it was good. From the trailers, it looked like a movie that was poorly made and just ridiculously cast. I really wouldn't picture Chris Pine in a movie like this, but when you look at the characters, the assortment of characters in this movie, he makes the most sense because he's the most charming of the bunch. It's a hilarious fantasy adventure. That's what this movie is at its heart. A fantasy comedy with, surprisingly, a lot of heart to it that I didn't even expect from this movie. For what did I love about this movie? All the characters really were awesome in this movie. Like I said, Chris Pine, he's got a lot of charm as this bard. I'm not a huge fan of Michelle Rodriguez. I think she plays a lot of the same types of characters in her roles. And I did have that a little bit here, but I liked the backstory that they gave to her character, and I thought she actually played it up really well. And there's a really fun cameo involving her backstory with that character. And I've been critical of Justice Smith in the past as well. This is the best I've seen him. I really liked him in this movie. He had a cool character. He didn't seem like he was afraid of anything. He's still playing a lot of those characters that really doubt themselves. But this one, even though he was a magician and he doubted himself, he tried to plow through it, come out on top in many situations. And that's a big step for him, I think, as both an actor and the characters he plays. Sophia Lillis, I liked her a lot in it. She's great here, as always. Hugh Grant, it's weird. This man has had such a weird career trajectory. He goes from, like, all these rom-coms to all of a sudden being in a bunch of Guy Ritchie movies where he's playing a gangster or something to now a fantasy movie where he's the villain. And he's the one who's hamming it up the most. Like, he's the one who feels like it's like he's really trying. Where Chris Pine, Michelle Rodriguez, Sophia Lillis, like, you feel like they inhabit this world. Like, their characters and their portrayal of these characters and their acting feels a lot more natural than Hugh Grant. Hugh Grant feels like he's actually trying, but he gets some really funny lines in there. I love the banter between all these characters. It reminded me a lot of Guardians of the Galaxy, just how these people came together, formed this group of, like, morons, you can say, or misfits, and tackled a problem that they had to solve together and try and get this relic before it got into the wrong hands. I love that about this movie. And then there's moments where the movie has room to breathe. And that's where you learn about the characters and what the motivation for the characters are, like Chris Pine's character. Surprisingly, all of that stuff, surprisingly, worked and almost made me shed a tear at the end. I was this close to shedding man tears. A Dungeons & Dragons movie did that. When Jean Page enters the picture, the movie completely takes off. I wish he was in the movie a little bit more. That is one of my complaints with the movie. I wanted to see him a lot more because he was next to Chris Pine, probably my second favorite character, if not my favorite character in the entire movie. He just added so much more energy to this movie. And when he shows up, he gets one sweet badass action sequence. And I'm just like, more of that guy, please. I want him on my team. I would want this guy in my D&D game for an eternity. He would be in every D&D game if I was the dungeon master. But then he goes away and doesn't come back until like the final seconds of the movie. I'm like, God damn it, he was cool. Why did we waste him? Movie makes money, but it's getting good reviews. Hopefully it gets great word of mouth and people go and see it. Maybe he'll have more of a role in the sequel. I hope so. The action was fun. I really liked the variety of action where it was swordplay, but it also mixed with spells and fantasy elements, and it was all in camera. There are a couple of quick cuts, but for the most part, it's long takes. These movies are learning, guys. They're learning. We're getting back to it. Big budget action movies are getting back to it. I mean, obviously, Mission Impossible knows how to do action. James Bond knows how to do action. Superhero movies, for the most part, know how to do action, but it's not choppy or sloppy or anything like that. Sigh of relief, because the way this movie was put together, or as I said, the vibe of it looked like it was just so bad it was good, and I thought that that was gonna be what this movie actually was, and it's not. It's actually so good, it's good. Because I thought it was gonna be so bad, it's good, that the action was going to be choppy and I was going to be laughing at it. What I was laughing at was the comedy. The comedy works. It really works. There are some gut-busting scenes in here, particularly one in a graveyard. And I could not stop laughing for about maybe like 30 seconds after the joke ended. And everybody else in the audience was laughing with me. This whole movie gave me like this 80s fantasy movie vibe. Like Krull. You remember Krull? I don't think anybody remembers Krull. Cheesy ass fantasy movie from like 1980, whatever. The first movie Liam Neeson was ever in, I believe. There's literally a 20-minute scene in that movie where a guy climbs a mountain. Luckily, that's not here, but there were moments where I was just like, yeah, like it's intentionally being silly like that. It does have those intentionally unintentional, funny moments where it acknowledges it's a bad movie. I cannot recommend a D&D movie enough than this. The CGI, though, is ass. I'm thoroughly convinced that Marvel Studios' visual effects supervisor, Victoria Alonso, was responsible for this terrible CGI. Oh, I'm sorry, is that joke too soon? If anything, the CGI is bad. Maybe that was the point, because they're just like, it's based on a board game. It's kind of left up to your imagination, and maybe it's like this is somebody imagining what a D&D game would be like, so imagination's not perfect. Maybe it was done like that on purpose. I don't know. It was super noticeable, and I hated the CGI in this movie. But other than the CGI and me wishing that Regé Jean Page, I'm still butchering his name, was in it more, this movie was a grand old time at the cinema. I had so much fun. This is the most fun so far I've had watching a movie in 2023, and it's a surprisingly good movie. It's not so bad it's good. It's actually like good. There's a lot of moving parts to the plot where it doesn't get convoluted. You can still follow it. The final 30 minutes or so reminded me of Goblet of Fire, and I'm like in all the best ways. So it takes a lot of fantasy elements, but uses those fantasy elements to its advantage and takes the best parts of those fantasy elements to present a third act that is really fun and entertaining. And the whole movie's just really fun and entertaining too. I'm going to say I really enjoyed Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves with a full bucket of popcorn, and I think you will too. That's already me knowing everybody's opinion on this movie, telling you that has to be the opinion. I know that everybody has an opinion, and you'll probably disagree with me, but if you do, prepare to get dungeon slayed. That's not a thing from Dungeons & Dragons. Like I said, I've never played. I have no idea. I just made up my own Dungeons & Dragons catchphrase. Comes out next week. I got to see it a week early thanks to an AMC Investor Connect screening. And I was really happy that I did, so I can get an early review out for you guys. When you do see it, let me know what you think about it. Drop me a comment in the comment section below. I'll leave a link to my website in the description below as well. You guys are the best. Thank you for watching. My name is Alex Madden, and I will see you at the movies somewhere.